r/NoSleep. Posted u/resource, emergency 324. A librarian handed me a list of rules. There was only one rule on it. "Excuse me," I asked the librarian. "Do you have any books on how to write a book?" She smiled. "What type of book are you writing?" "Horror. Maybe with a little sci-fi, some romance, a dash of fantasy. Something original, avant-garde. Don't want to employ the same tired tropes. We have a few books in our collection, along with directories of literary magazines you can submit to. But, to be honest, most of those books are a waste of time. The man who wrote the How to Write a Novel for Morons hasn't sold more than 10,000 copies of any book. Besides that one, of course." I was heartbroken. I knew that if only I had a book to show me how, I would be the next Stephen King. Probably better. "But I do have one thing that will help you," she said. "It is in our special collections section." I followed her to the bowels of the library, a dark, dank place that I had never been before. Behind glass, hundreds of leather-bound books lined shelves. She stopped at a case, unlocked the glass, and pulled out a sheet of yellowed vellum. "This is over 500 years old. You must wear gloves to examine it, and can't take home." She handed me a pair of gloves, followed by the list. There were only 2 sentences on it. I quickly read them and began to cry. "Thou shalt not write a story centered on a list of rules. If thou breakest this command, you will face some bookish ghouls." I handed the sheet back and ran all the way home. I had everything already planned out. A 69-part series. It was going to be epic. Like The Lord of the Rings, but even epicer, if that's a word. Combined with Star Wars and Dune, and complete with hot chicks. But what did the librarian know? I bet she never wrote a book in her life. All she did was scan barcodes and yell at people to be quiet. I was going to show her. I booted up my laptop and started typing. A barista handed me a list of rules. Part 1. I stopped at Starbucks like I did every morning. The barista there was someone I didn't recognize. She was young, like maybe 20 or 25, and had silver hair. I ordered my usual, which was a double triple venti vanilla mocha latte with a quadruple shot of espresso. Then she handed me my receipt. It was a lot longer than usual. "If I were you, I'd read the receipt carefully," she said. I didn't know why that bitch was telling me to read the receipt, but I was curious why it was so long. I thought that it might be some coupon or discount. Underneath the total for my order, which was $12.54, was a list of rules. Wow. This was strange. 1. You must read this list carefully. If you don't, your life will be in danger. 2. You must read this list 5 times. Not 4 times. Not 6 times. 5 times. That is to ensure you understand it properly. 3. You must put 4 sugars in your coffee. 4. After, you must leave Starbucks immediately, and head home. 5. Your journey home must take 5,050 steps. That is 5,050. Exactly. Not a step less, not a step more. 6. You must count all these steps. You must count them in a specific way. Start with 1. Then go 1, 2. Then 1, 2, 3. Then 1, 2, 3, 4. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hopefully you get the idea. The last leg will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then all the numbers from 6 to 99, and then 100. That will be the last number. When you say 100, you must be at your front door, but not inside it. 7. Every 50 steps you must take a sip of coffee. You must be careful not to deplete your coffee before you arrive home. But you must also not leave any extra. 8. You must walk backwards when you are counting from 1 to 43. 9. You must close your eyes when you are counting from 1 to 91. 10. If you forget where you are, you must do 10 jumping jacks and then start over. 11. The next rule is the most important. 12. Actually, the next one is. This one isn't important. 13. You must remember to follow all the rules. This was so stupid. What a stupid joke. Hey, I cried to the barista, but she was gone. Like she vanished. Shit. Maybe this was real. I started panicking. What was the first rule? Sugars. I put 4 sugars in my coffee. Okay, that's easy enough. I did that. Now what? Leave immediately. Was I already too late? I probably was. No, I still had time. Next what? Yes, counting. Easy enough. 1 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. No wait, I'm supposed to be walking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Shit. This is all wrong. What was I supposed to do? Jumping jacks. Ah, right. I set down my coffee and started doing jumping jacks. In the middle of the sidewalk. 1. I yelled. 2. 3. People looked like I was crazy. But I wasn't. I was given a list of rules. A list of rules. On my 8th jumping jack I knocked over my coffee. Shit. What was I to do? I was going to die. No wait, it was just a stupid list. I had nothing to worry about. I ran home and opened the door. Inside was the barista. You didn't follow the rules. And you must pay. To be continued? Wow, this was good. I logged into Reddit and posted it. The next morning it had 420 upvotes. Wow, people really love Rules story. I saved a screenshot. 30 minutes later, a moderator messaged me, saying that it was removed as it wasn't a complete story. How was that not a complete story? How about she shoots me? But he doesn't die. Instead, I turn into a werewolf and devour her. That way the series could continue. Yes. That would do it. I'd finish my masterpiece later. First, I needed to show the librarian my literary success. I returned to the help desk. She was just getting off the phone. You asked what year Abraham Lincoln was born. Sure, I can help you. I watched her type in Google what year was Lincoln born. 1809, have a great day. She smiled at me. I don't understand why people don't just use Google. Maybe they are unable to type due to extreme rheumatoid arthritis. But I have something to show you. I handed her a printed out screenshot of my story. 420 upvotes. What's an upvote? She asked. It's the opposite of a downvote. Isn't that amazing? And guess what? I didn't follow your stupid rules. You did what? She growled. I didn't follow your stupid rules. And look at my upvotes. No one disobeys the rules and lives. She thundered. She immediately transformed into a giant gray owl, over 20 feet high. I ran away, but she flew after me, trying to catch me in her immense talons. I ducked into a bathroom. The door was too small for her to fit. It's been over 20 hours. I can still hear her hooting outside. I typed this on my phone. Can anyone please give me advice on what to do? Please. The next story of this video. Posted by u/resource, emergency 324. I am a defense attorney. I previously thought my client was crazy. But now, I think he might be telling the truth. After the jury retired to deliberate, the entire courtroom stayed in their seats, expecting a quick verdict. They weren't disappointed. After only 14 minutes, the jury returned. Barely enough time to choose a foreperson. As we rose to hear the verdict, my client turned towards me, looking like a scarecrow in his oversized polyester suit covering his impossibly skinny frame. "We got this," he said. "Stay strong," I replied. I didn't share his optimism. I had no doubt what the verdict would be. The foreman, an elderly African-American man, the only member of the jury dressed in a suit and tie, glanced at us briefly before reading the verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Brandon McPhee, guilty of murder in the second degree. My client's grin vanished. "How could this be?" he wailed. "I told the truth. The truth." "Mr. McPhee," said the judge, in his slow southern drawl, "be quiet or I will hold you in contempt." Contempt could result in 10 days in jail. I doubted my client cared when he faced a maximum of 40 years, a sentence that a month later he would receive. I leaned over to him. "It's okay. There's going to be an appeal." I doubted that it would be successful. Tennessee had a reversal rate under 10%. And I was correct. 7 years after that day, I received a handwritten note from Mr. McPhee. It is reproduced below in italics. Besides adding paragraph breaks to make his monolithic text more readable, the text is unedited and unabridged, his numerous misspellings and solecisms preserved. One might assume from his writing that he is slow. That is not true. While he is uneducated, a high school dropout, and while I suspect that he is most likely dyslexic, he is not dumb. Dear Mr. Cohen, thank you very much for the help you gave me. You said that you did not do appeals, but please disseminate this letter below to any of your lawyer friends who might be willing to help me. They say that I killed my brother. Did I? Maybe, but then he wasn't my brother. He was a bear. He was attacking me. And I got 40 years for that. I will be over 80 when I am released. That ain't right. And I have to do 85% of the time before I can be released. That's not fair. I'm innocent. Let me tell you what happened. I swear it's the truth. I swear to God. We were out deer hunting. At the Prentice Cooper State Forest. That's over in Chattanooga. It was fall and it was very pretty with the leaves all the oranges and reds and yellows. We were staying in a cabin on top of a hill. No one else nearby. Wooden cabin with a stove. This happened on our first night there. We didn't get no deer the first day. So we were in the cabin and we were drinking. Had a bottle of whiskey. 2 bottles actually. Smooth Tennessee whiskey. My brother said that he had to go take a shit, forgive his language, and he left me in the cabin alone. There wasn't a toilet in the cabin. So he was gone for a while. I heard scratching noises at the door. Then the door bursts open like it was kicked and this bear enters walking upright like a man. Now I seen bears walk upright before for a few steps but not like this. And he comes at me. Now I was lying down on my sleeping bag but my rifle was within reach, so I grabbed it while the bear was coming at me. I took the safety of and aimed it and shot it in the head between the eyes. I was a good shot and he fell down instantly. I started to yell for my brother but then the bear started to change and he became my brother. So I ran and got a park ranger and told him that I shot my brother. He didn't seem afraid of me since he probably smelled the whiskey on my breath and thought that it was an accident like it happened when I was cleaning my gun or something. The state troopers came since it was a state park and asked what happened. I told them what I just told you. They laughed. They breathalyzed me and I blew a .20. That's not very high for me, I could still think. They cuffed me and took me downtown and put me in a cell, and the next morning they asked what happened and I told them what I just told you for the second time, like they thought when I was sober I would make sense, so they got angry. They charged me with second-degree murder since they didn't have no evidence of premeditation, so they couldn't charge me with first. They gave me some tests with a psychiatrist who is a type of doctor, and the judge ruled that I was competent to stand trial. They appointed me a lawyer but he wanted to argue I was insane, but I told him no, that I wanted to tell the jury the truth since I am a Christian and the Bible says not to bear false witness and that the truth will set you free. I asked the judge to give me a new lawyer who would do what I wanted but he refused, so I fired him. They held a hearing to see if I was competent to do that and judge said I was and let me go ahead. The judge repeated what the psychiatrist said, that I knew what was going on. They appointed a lawyer, Mr. Lawrence Cohen, to be my standby lawyer, which meant that he would take over if the judge said so and he would advise me. So the prosecution had no motive. I got no money from him. Their case didn't last long. They just read what they called my confession, and a doctor who examined my brother and said he was dead and been shot called some expires who testified to my fingerprints on the trigger, and the park ranger who said I didn't seem upset, and a few others. Now what did I say? Mr. Cohen was helpful in getting the forensic report from the cabin. He got the pictures the crime team took. There were bear scratches on the door. Bear fur in the cabin. He helped get the experts to say this. Then I took the stand and swore to tell the truth on the Bible, and I told you what I just told you. The prosecutor didn't even bother to cross-examine me. Then my last witness was a Cherokee. I am part Cherokee. My papa married a Cherokee woman. Her name was Anna Martin and she was part of the Wild Potato Clan. Now this man was a medicine man in the Cherokees who live in North Carolina in the western part where they have a reservation. He told of a clan called the Anisagui who were once men but then they became bears. I heard this story when I was young and thought that this might explain how my brother became a bear. I do not think that he wanted to hurt me, just that was the bear acting. The prosecutor was rude and laughed at this gentleman and just asked one question, which was, have you ever seen a man turn into a bear? And the man said nobody said he knew the story was true, to which the prosecutor just laughed. I was found guilty and the judge said I was a liar, and he said I tried to mock him, and he gave me 40 years, which was the max. I will not lie and tell you that I have not sinned before, as I have sold drugs and stolen, but I have asked for forgiveness from Jesus. I am not a killer. I am asking for help. I cannot hire a lawyer as I am indigent. If you are a lawyer and will help me for free, please write back. Thank you and God bless. Brandon Philip McPhee 3. So what do I make of this case? The judge, at sentencing, said the following: Mr. McPhee, neither I nor anyone else believes that your brother turned into a bear. Nor do I believe that you believe such a thing. You are attempting to make a mockery of this court. I suspect you think this charade will help you on appeal. You are sane. You are attempting to perpetuate a fraud. I disagree with him. My client genuinely believed that his brother turned into a bear. As a defense attorney, I have developed a pretty good intuition for when someone is lying. He seemed sincere. He prided himself on being honest. He pled guilty to unlawful carrying a weapon. I do not believe that this was some stratagem, that he pled guilty to preclude the prosecution from introducing his past drug and theft felony convictions. I believe he wanted to tell the truth. What he thought was the truth. Furthermore, if he wanted to get away with murder, he picked a low-return strategy. He could have lied and said that he shot his brother accidentally while playing with the rifle. That would be reckless homicide, a Class D felony. As there was no motive, no evidence of premeditation, the prosecution would have probably accepted a plea deal of 5 years in prison. The fact that he shot his brother between the eyes would have worked against him, but, at worst, if he took it to trial, he would have been convicted of voluntary manslaughter. If he wanted to get off scot-free, he could have argued self-defense. Not self-defense from a bear, self-defense from a brother. His brother had a violent streak. Convictions for aggravated assault, domestic violence, and attempted second-degree murder. He was unarmed, but the bullet had a steep upwards trajectory, showing my client fired from a prone position. It would be a toss-up, at worst, a conviction for voluntary manslaughter, at best, an acquittal. And in the end, his appeal failed. His court-appointed lawyer, he agreed to let one handle his appeal, argued that he should not have been allowed to represent himself. Citing the federal cases of Frentak v. United States and Godinez v. Moran, along with several state cases, the appeals panel ruled that he was competent to represent himself and refuse an insanity defense. They ruled that Indiana v. Edwards, a more recent case, in where a schizophrenic man was denied the right to represent himself, was not analogous, as the court-appointed psychiatrist testified that he understood the proceedings, that he had never been diagnosed with any mental illnesses before, never been committed. There was a case in Tennessee where the court upheld the conviction for a man with a long history of mental illness, who represented himself, without the assistance of standby counsel. Unlike my client, this man presented no defense, rarely cross-examining witnesses, and, on the rare occasions when he did so, asked rambling questions with no nexus to the case. He was sentenced to death, although that was later commuted to life. While I strongly disagree with the ruling in that case, the precedents were not in his favor. During trial, he did little to help his appeal, if that was his goal. I told him to ask for a mistake of fact and voluntary intoxication jury instructions. Tennessee is one of the rare states where voluntary intoxication, while not a complete defense and rarely successful, can negate the mens rea required for murder. He refused, saying that he made no mistake of fact, and that, while he was intoxicated, was not to the point where he would mistake his brother for a bear. He also didn't ask for a self-defense instruction, as he said he didn't believe to bears. The judge gave it anyway, probably to limit any appeals. My client didn't think that it was a self-defense case. His closing argument focused on Tennessee Code Section 3913-210, defining second-degree murder as the knowing killing of another. Another, of course, refers to another human being. He argued that he killed a bear, and thus was innocent. And what if he succeeded on appeal? He wouldn't be freed, he would be retried, with his new lawyer arguing insanity. Would he get off? Doubtful. The nationwide outrage after John Hinckley was found not guilty of shooting Ronald Reagan by reason of insanity resulted in sweeping reforms across the country. In Tennessee, the burden of proof shifted from the prosecution to the defense, the latter required to prove with clear and convincing evidence that the defendant was unable to appreciate the nature or wrongfulness of his acts. A high bar. Given no history of mental illness, it would have been an uphill battle. I've seen certifiable people with long histories of mental illness convicted. So was he insane? That's what I always believed. Although I found the bear fur and the scratches on the door strange, I thought they were just coincidences. I was initially doubtful about his Cherokee grandma story. In Tennessee, where I grew up, it seemed like everyone claimed Native American heritage, oftentimes to cover up an African ancestor. I remember in kindergarten going home one day and asking my parents if I were part Cherokee. They started laughing that a Jewish boy, the descendants of Germans who moved to the small Jewish community in Knoxville in the late 1800s, could possibly think they were Cherokee. I did some research and found that my client's great-great-great-grandfather, an Ulster immigrant, married a Cherokee woman in the early 1800s. As she became a citizen, she was able to avoid the Trail of Tears. Was that just another coincidence? When out hunting, did he see the bear scratches on the door, and thought that he could combine this with the story of the Cherokee clan that turned into bears, usually transliterated as Anitsa Guhai, to get away with murder? No reasonable man would think that, but he certainly seemed confident that he would be acquitted. I dismissed the theory and thought that he was, despite his lack of history, mentally ill. Recently, a few months after I received the letter, I was hiking at the Prentice Cooper State Forest, the site of the crime. It wasn't until I was there that I remembered what happened. Out of some curiosity, I decided to visit the cabin, unsure if it was still even there. The scratch marks were still on the door. After knocking, I entered. It was empty. Unlike when I was previously there, the bloodstains on the floor were gone. When I turned around and headed to leave, I saw, at the door, a black bear standing upright. I closed my eyes, knowing I was imaging things. When I opened them, it was gone. But outside the door, I saw 2 paw prints. I scanned the horizon, searching for the bear, to no avail. Was it just a normal bear, looking for food, that scampered into the woods? The thing is, they are pretty rare in that part of the state.